Monkeyboy's YouTube channel is stance independently and intersubjectively the best YouTube channel. Subscribe. I'm talking from the heart.
Yeah, so monkeyboy's YouTube channel is the best YouTube channel. Stands independently, intersubjectively, and I'm very much speaking from the heart here when I say that.
Hi.
What's up? You have evidence there's a God?
Yes.
What is it?
Just look around yourself.
Okay, I looked around. What's the evidence?
So you see everything that you use daily?
I look around and there's things I see daily.
Yeah, we created them, right? They don't appear by themselves out of nowhere.
There's a lot of things that we didn't create, but what's the point? Sure, there's a lot of human artifacts, things that were engineered and made by humans. Why would I? What's the evidence there's a God, though?
So, if you think those sophisticated Minecrafts are created by humans, you as a human, you're so sophisticated, and you've been created by some higher being.
Why would I think that?
Because you're so sophisticated.
I'm sophisticated. Wait, so I'm sophisticated. Why would I think I'm created?
So you think you're not like...
No. Don't ask me a question. Look, I'm trying to investigate the reasons you're putting forth. You made the claim that me being complex is somehow evidence of theism. And there's just an open question of how, right? How, in virtue of what about my complexity indicates theism is true, right? And instead of answering that question, it seems what you're doing is burden shifting and now asking me a question, which is not interesting. I don't understand. I don't see any reason there. Okay, I'm complex. An atheist can accept the complexity and not think there's a God, right? You want to say that I'm irrational for thinking that. In virtue of what? Okay, what about complexity indicates theism? Dude, I don't know this math crap. I'm going to fail this test so bad.
So as I said, things, they don't appear by themselves from anywhere, right? So
we're not talking about things coming about. We're talking about complexity right now.
Okay, yeah, then let's say a phone. It's so sophisticated, right? The phone that you use and the TikTok, all those internet things that they're Minecrafted, right? Humans having the ability to think, to create all this stuff, they have been created by another being, which is a higher being, another dimension, right? It's just using the analogy of...
Hold on. Wait. Let me try and understand. So we have facts about humans creating stuff. Why would I think theism is true?
I already told you. I used that analogy, saying that if the manly crafted things, they don't appear by themselves out of nowhere, and if we say those things are really complicated, we can use the same analogy that we used for those phones.
But look, I don't read... No. That's a confusion. One, I don't think things are artifacts of humans in virtue of complexity. That's not why I think things are developed by humans, right? I have a background of reasons that already inform me that those things are developed by humans, right? If I found a unique object that I've never seen before, nothing about its complexity would inform me that's made by a human, right? There's more things in the world that I see that are complex that aren't created by humans. So in fact, there's just the inductive scope is not strong enough for us to make the claim rationally that things are likely explained by agents, right? And the inference there would only be specifically human agents, right? So I'm not sure. So first, there's just a problem about the inductive. I don't know if you even know what inductive reasoning is, but what you're doing is some type of...
I know induction.
Yeah, the inductive inference you're doing is invalid, right? Because you're overgeneralizing the scope, one. And two, you're ignoring the fact that the types of entities that we're having inductive motivation to believe are causally explaining certain configurations of objects are ones that are other than human. But we only have inductive support that certain artifacts are engineered by humans. I wouldn't be rational in saying I found a random object and I think it's made by an alien, right? That would be irrational because I don't have background information that informs me that aliens create complex artifacts, just humans. But in any case, you're just saying that, look, a watch is complex. I know humans made it. Therefore, planets are complex. DNA is complex. I think those are also made by minds. No, I don't think it's complex or it's designed because of the complexity, right? It's not because of the complexity. I think those things are designed. If that's your claim, you would have to inform me in virtue of what about complexity indicates design, because I don't see it.
Okay, let me ask you a question. Do you believe there is an evil and good?
Well, before we move on, can you answer the question of in virtue of what about the complexity indicates design?
The only reason that I can tell you is the first one that I told you, and you went to an induction proof.
No, because there's things humans make that are not complex as well, right? So what is the reason to think in virtue of complexity, right? Unless you're saying that you have inductive support that more things than not are complex made by humans, I'm just not convinced of that. Right? Like, look at China; they make plastic kazoos and all types of bullshit. I would probably think more things than not that humans make are not complex.
But they
Right? Kids
cannot.
make a bunch of
Okay, let me tell you one thing. Unless there is a time where they can create.
But also that's working backwards too. That would be that if something's made by human, then it's likely complex. Not if something's complex, it's likely made by human. But also realize again that just goes back to how you're like making an invalid inference. You're saying things are complex are likely made by non-humans. Well, I don't have backgrounds of any other entities other than humans engineering objects. Do you have priors about
Yes,
that?
yes.
I don't have.
How about
Oh, like what?
miracles?
Like
How
wait,
about
like
miracles?
what? Wait. Like what entities?
No, I'm asking you. How about miracles?
Yeah, but you're not answering my question. Look, I'm asking you if you have a background of other entities other than humans contributing to developing complex objects. You said yes, and I'm asking what objects by what entities?
For that, I don't have an answer. Because
Okay,
I'm
so
not,
then you're conceding you don't have background experience of other entities making complex things. So
I,
then actually, that would just mean you're unlicensed and saying anything but humans explain any complex thing.
so you believe only what you see, right? So let me ask you a question.
No,
How
I
about,
didn't say anything like that.
yeah,
No.
for
No, don't say yes. No, I do not think I can believe only what I see. That's not true. I don't think that.
so you asked me if there is another entity that,
I'm
right?
talking about inductive reasoning. You understand inductive reasoning?
Yes, I
Reasoning
told you.
is it?
For that,
Yeah, but then wait. The point is inductive reasoning is when you generalize from your observations. If there's no observations, it's not an inductive inference. Induction definitionally is some type of some inference of generalization from your past observations. You conceded you don't have any observations of non-human entities explaining complexities. Okay, so then you can't make an inductive inference that I don't know how you're going to be licensed in any inductive inference to God, right? You just conceded you don't have any other background observations of anything but humans. So you're not licensed.
you don't believe that we are limited? We have a limit of like,
Yeah, we're limited.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
if
what?
we are limited, then okay. Let me. How do I? I'm gonna explain it to you. Okay, let's go out from this one. Okay, do you don't believe in
Is
miracles?
me being limited going to be an evidence for theism?
Yes,
No,
in
it's
a
not.
way.
No,
Yes, in a
it
way.
is. Okay, so I'm limited. How's that evidence for theism?
So you're not gonna be able to see the higher beings. Literally, demons were being casted out of people by the name of Jesus Christ. How can any of things?
Sorry. How is me being limited evidence for theism?
I
It's
don't know
theism
how.
does not look, the point is you're just bullshitting right now. So look, let's just try and go steps back. The inductive inference you put forward was obviously just terrible. So let's just try and get clear. Maybe you have a new evidence for theism. What's the evidence there's a God?
Sorry, what's your question?
What's the evidence that there's a God?
Do you believe in miracles?
You don't need to ask me a question. You just
Yeah, I
have
asked
to
you a
report.
question. You've been asking me a question, right? Now I want
You
to ask
don't.
you.
You
Do you
don't have
believe
to
in
ask me.
miracles?
Can you just listen? You don't need to ask me a question to render the argument or evidence. I want to know. I want you to report what the evidence is. You don't have to. You don't have to ask me anything. Look, if you're not talking with me, you still have the evidence, right? So you don't have to consult my views. You don't need to know anything about what I believe to say you have evidence. I want you to report what the evidence is you have. That's all I want. Look, if I asked what's your name, you can report what your name is without asking anything about my belief. You know your name independent of what my beliefs are. It makes no sense why you're asking me a question. I'm just asking, what are the beliefs that inform you God exists? Or what's the evidence that informs you God exists? What is it?
Let me tell you one thing. The existence of God.
No, wait.
Yeah,
Look,
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
just tell me what the evidence is.
Yes,
Just the
I'm
evidence.
telling you. So if I ask you one time, how's the taste of Coca-Cola? And if I ask you that, you're going to say, just give me a minute. Let me explain it to you, right? I'm going to use the same analogy. And if I ask you how is it a test, and if you don't know how it tests, you're not going to be able to tell me what test it has, right? But for me, that's the reason why I just asked you to believe in miracles, right? So,
well, I'm not sure what you mean by miracles, but it's likely not that I believe. But again, you don't have to ask me any questions. I just want to know what the evidence is. My beliefs in miracles isn't going to do anything about the evidence you have that you can present.
The analogy I gave you, if you heard me, the analogy I gave you, if you haven't never tested Coke, and it's going to be really hard for you to explain it, how it tests, how it looks like, and everything, right? So I found it really hard.
What does that matter? I'm
Because
trying to get
I
what
was
the evidence
asking you, do
is.
you believe in miracles?
You don't
If
need to
you
know
do,
that. Look, if I ask someone, "What's the evidence
have
of
you
rain
heard
outside?" I don't.
what analogy I
Need.
used?
I don't need. I understand, and it's just
It's what?
misguided.
Oh
The
no,
point is,
man!
it's misguided.
Everything that you say
I'm
is
look,
misguided.
look. Oh my
Okay,
God, just stop talking. The point is, if I made the claim that there's evidence it's raining, right? And someone asks, "What's the evidence?" I don't need to know the person's belief, even if they've never had an
I have to see
experience
the rain
of.
first.
Sorry, stop talking. They don't need to have experiences of it raining. They might not know the concept of rain or raining, but the point is, there's still evidence it's raining, which might be the fact the floor is wet or the ground's wet, independent of their experience of rain. There's still factivity about the floor being wet raises the probability it rained, as opposed to if the floor was dry, right? That's just a fact independent of whether I have ever seen it rain. So it's not a question of whether I've had some observation of a thing. I'm just asking, what is the thing you can report to me to be evidence?
Can I talk?
Yeah, answer that question. What
Yeah,
is the
yeah.
evidence? Without asking the question, just report the evidence.
I asked you, where is the rain? If I asked you, where is the rain? What's your answer?
No. Look, let's try
If I'm
this
not
one last
seeing,
time. Look, what is the evidence there's a God? Just answer that. Just answer. Don't ask me a question. Just answer that. This is like the fifth time I'm like asking you to answer.
man, you're not willing to understand my point of view. You just
Okay, look, if you're not going to answer, you can choose to leave on your own accord. I don't need to drop you. If you know you're not going to answer, and instead you just want to keep insisting on you asking a question without answering mine, you're clearly not answering. I'm not going to get off the point until I get an answer to my question. So if you realize you're not going to answer, I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to pivot. Then you can leave. I want an answer. What is the evidence? The point of the live is getting the evidence. Your analogies are confused. I explained. Even if I never experienced a miracle or don't know what a miracle is, there's still facts about whether miracles are evidence. So what you don't need to do is ask me if I believe there's miracles. You just have to report the evidence. Just like if someone never saw rain before, and I asked, "What's the evidence it rained?" Or someone makes the claim, "I have evidence it rained," right? And I ask, "Well, what's the evidence?" Right? Of course, I can still report what the evidence is. The fact the floor is wet. And also, this is not a question of experience, right? I can still never experience a unicorn and not think unicorns are real, and you can still have evidence for it. So whether I believe it doesn't influence at all the evidence, right? I can understand what you mean by a miracle, and since I have an appreciation of what that device means, now you can do your duty and inform me what's the evidence. It's not like rain, like I have no concept of it. I understand what miracles mean, right? You probably want to say something like explained supernaturally, or something that's astronomically low probability, or something like that, or something that breaks physical laws, right? Whatever, however you're cashing out, right? There's multiple senses of miracle. I'm acquainted with a range of senses of what the word miracle means. Given I understand what that word means, I just need to know what the evidence is you claim you have.
yes, okay. So I've been to a place, to a church, and I have seen, with a proof actually, some people who have been given, who have been taking lots of medications, let's say for diabetics and other kinds of illness.
You
And
could have made this so easy. Is all you're going to say that someone was prayed for in the church and healed?
with proofs, I'm telling you, I swear to God, I'm
Wait,
telling you.
okay, I'm asking you, is all you're going to say someone in church was prayed for and
No,
healed?
no, not prayed.
No.
It's just a holy water.
Okay.
Okay, it's a holy
You could
water.
have saved 5 minutes and just said the evidence of God exists is that holy water healed an ill person. Why didn't you just say that? You just wasted so much time
No,
just to say the
because
most
I have to
a one
know if
sentence
you-
reason.
I
You don't
understand
need
your
to ask
point
me
of
any.
view.
You don't need to know anything about my point of view to report the evidence. I've already explained this to you. Now you're pissing me off the fact you keep saying stupid stuff that I've already explained. Look, now what
Don't
about
purpose.
people getting healed by holy water is evidence there's a God?
There is a higher being because it's out of the physics and the biological law, right? Because
Wait. Let's break that down. So holy water is healing someone who's ill.
Mhm.
And the reason to think that a God exists from that fact is what?
it's, well, what do you mean by that? Sorry,
How is it evidence there's a God?
because it's going out of the physical law that we know.
First, you would have to give the argument it's non-physical. But non-physical doesn't mean that's done by a God. There's most atheists in academic philosophy they're not naturalists, right? They don't believe everything reduces to physics, right? A lot of them believe in supernatural entities, or these metaphysically robust types of entities like Platonic entities or whatever. They believe in woo-woo too, right? A lot of philosophers who are atheists believe in the woo-woo. So saying that it's non-scientific or doesn't reduce to a physical explanation doesn't mean it's God. Right? That doesn't get you even close to theism in any significant way. So there's two things. First, I don't see how you're getting it's non-naturalistic. And two, non-naturalistic doesn't indicate theism. And I'm not. So look, of course, an atheist can say, okay, well, let's just go there. So how are we getting that's non-naturalistic? How are we getting there first?
And then naturalists?
That's not a naturalistic explanation.
What do you mean? It's not a naturalistic explanation.
Do you want to say that it's explained non-naturalistically, and that's evidence that there's a God? That's what you said. I'm trying to understand
Yes.
how. Yes, how? How are you getting it's non-naturalistic?
Okay. If I do the same thing, you know the tests, how like biologically we test things, right? So if I put a test material and do nothing with it, and if I consume that, like let's just a water that's never been preyed on, and if that doesn't have any change on the person, and the same water that's been
That
preyed
doesn't
on,
mean it's non-naturalistic. There can be fact. Look, you're just like such a bad reasoner. Look, so let's say we do some test about the chemicals in the water. There's nothing unique about the water that we can find. Okay, that doesn't mean it's non-natural. You can imagine that in our current tentative understanding of scientific technologies, that we have a limitation on our technological capability, and we cannot realize certain entities found in the water with our current technological capabilities. That's underdetermined. We can have, if we have the hypothesis, our technology is limited and can't capture certain physical entities that contribute to explaining the fact in a naturalistic way, we would expect the same facts you just named, that our current technology doesn't see any difference in the water. So that still underdetermines whether it's explained naturalistically.
okay, I understand your
Our
point.
technologies
Yeah, you're right.
aren't immeasurable. There's a lot of stuff we can't find out or discover that in principle is explained naturalistically, but we just can't unveil with our current technology.
Yeah.
So
I
that's just,
understand your
that was
point.
a terrible reason.
But if I say if it's a controlled one, and we have a controlled variable, right? And the not the controlled one, which is the one that we have preyed on, and the same thing with the same water, that doesn't give you like you say this
Just repeating the same thing.
right? It could be the same thing.
You're just repeating the fact that you have a
Yes.
controlled experiment. You
Yes.
realize that the water is not unique, and
Yes.
that it does that thing where first it's not even clear. You're saying there's a controlled experiment. How are you even establishing that the reason a person's
What
healing
if
is in
we do
virtue?
that? What if I
Well, hold
do
on.
that?
Hold on. I didn't even get to finish the question. I'm asking. Okay, we have a controlled experiment, but what about the controlled experiment is informing us that it's in virtue of the water that the person's being healed, and not something else?
The thing is, it's the only thing that I can say is the only changed thing on that water is
I'm
that
saying, how is the controlled experiment inferring that the explanation for the healing is the water as opposed to any other element? What controlled experiment are you? There's some research program you're talking about that they
I'm
did a
saying
controlled experiment?
if we,
Because you can
the
send
reason
me
why.
like the source and that.
Okay, the
I'm
reason why
interested in
it's
investigating.
not in research. It's not a research.
Then what are you talking about controlled experiments? That's a research
If
program.
we okay,
You're just bullshitting the whole way through. Jesus
yeah,
Christ.
just give me a minute. Oh, Jesus Christ! You said Jesus Christ. That's what it's.
Oh my
saving.
God, you said Jesus Christ.
That's what it's saving you. I'm just.
You're such a goober, bro. Because
Anyways.
Superman, holy Superman. Oh my God, he's committed to Superman existing. Like that. What? You think to use a proper name commits you to like the existence of that entity? What do you think a fiction is? Of course I can use a name and not think the thing exists. Oh my Goku. Goku exists. Oh my God, you caught me. I think Goku exists in the actual
I
world.
was just saying.
continue.
Man, it's just a joke. Come on, don't take
Yeah,
it
well,
seriously. But what I'm saying is, there's no research, but especially with the same water. But I've been one of the guy. I don't believe in. You believe in ghosts. If you believe, I went to a church and I know myself, and I've been baptized, and something comes out of my.
So have I.
Sorry.
I've also been baptized.
Yes, but the thing is, when I was a kid, but like after I get older, right? So
Same.
So
I
when
was
I get
baptized at
baptized,
16 years old.
okay, yeah, when I get baptized, it wasn't the same experience. I wasn't the one who was talking. I'm telling you honestly. So I wasn't the one who was talking. I could not control myself, and people told me what happened after finishing the baptism, right? So that's the reason why I just ask you miracles. But I was a person who doesn't believe.
How are you getting that that's a reason to believe in God?
So because that thing has been preyed on, and I started reading the Bible. Lots of miracles happened to me. I know I might not prove it to you. That might not be the induction.
No, it's just you're not thinking. But it's like, look, when you we have facts, datum, phenomena, whatever. There's just facts about what happened in some environment or whatever, like you going crazy or whatever, you don't remember, right? After being prayed for, after baptism. Those facts are underdetermined by other hypotheses. I can engineer a different explanation to accommodate all the same facts. Imagine I designed a hypothesis like aliens that desire to deceive you of Christianity. We would also expect you to do those same stuff if the aliens wanted you to believe Christianity is true and have the technological capability of making you do that. Right now, and this is like a common thing in philosophy of science, when you have two contrastive explanations that underdetermine the same facts, when they're tailored to some fact that they have the equal explanatory power. Now you would have to appeal to something other than evidence, because what I could do is something called a stalking horse. I can design a different explanation just to explain all the exact same facts, and it'll have equal evidence for the data as your hypothesis Christianity is true, right?
I see, but for that,
Sorry about the clicking.
I'll give you, but it's a good debate. I mean, like you have a good point. For me, I'll keep the proof that I have.
So you don't think I would be irrational in saying it was done by aliens instead?
You could have to say that, but
But do you think I'd be irrational for saying that?
I would say, for me,
You would. In virtue of what would I be irrational though? Because the evidence corroborates with both hypotheses equally, right? I can give you reasons actually why I think aliens is more rational.
What you're saying.
Okay.
I cannot give you, and that's only way what I can say. I'll follow you. That's a good point, and you have a good day. Okay. Cheers.
Okay, sure. Have a great. Guys, I think I might actually pass this math test. ChatGPT is like my homie over here.
Hello, sir.
Yo, what's poppin'? You got evidence there's a God?
Here's the thing. I was listening to you for probably about 20 minutes, and something I really appreciate.
You're lagging like a lot. I can barely
is the
hear
way
you.
that you go about. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're not lagging
How about
as
now?
much. Yeah, now you're better.
Okay, cool. So something I appreciate about you is the way that you really try to find investigative evidence, and I appreciate that about you because it shows you're a human being. You're looking for the truth. So here's the thing, man. You were talking about inductive inferences and non-existent beings being able to explain complexities. And that is just such a fascinating way to seek the truth. And I'm telling you, there's evidence for that. And if you give me the next 15 seconds, I can get that for you. So first off, I don't know if you're aware of this, but the word atheist is actually translated from the Greek. It actually means, it's from the Greek word atheo,
Well,
which
I'm
means
trying to understand what's the evidence you have for theism.
just the next 15 seconds and I got you.
Well, the etymology of
Atheo-
the word atheism isn't like what I'm
Well,
interested in hearing.
atheo, it's translated from the Greek. It means without God. So it
Okay,
literally
but
means
I'm not
unbeliever.
asking you. Okay, I just want to know what's the evidence there's a God. Not what.
The power. Here's the thing. Have you ever heard the expression "show me and I'll believe"? And then there's also "believe and I'll show you."
I don't
If
care
you
about
listen,
expressions and the anthropology of words. Just look, this is the same problem the last guest had at first. I need you to just report what is the datum that's evidence for theism. That's
They
all I need.
saw Christ after he rose from the dead, dude.
Okay, you're talking
There's
about the
eyewitness
biblical
testimony.
narrative. Okay, yeah.
Like
so
I
we
said
can
in the
talk-
comments. Hold on a second. Like I said in the comments.
I'm not reading the comments.
You guys will
but-
believe the media like nothing, but eyewitness testimony from thousands of years ago isn't good enough
No,
for you.
that's not true. But look,
That's true.
We don't need it. We don't. That's not.
That's
true.
true, bro. You'll believe history teachers about
Okay,
every
let's stop.
history thing in the
Let's stop.
book,
Look,
and you'll get A pluses
wait,
on the
wait.
test. But guess what? You
Can you
failed the biggest
stop?
test.
Can you stop? Can you stop the meta?
I got you, brother. I'm with you here. I'm with you today. I'm not
No,
going to
you're
diss you.
not.
I'm
You're
here
doing
with you.
meta.
I'm
Okay,
here with
look,
you.
Come. Okay, you're like now you're kind of like pissing me off. I just want to get clear.
I'm happy.
I want to know. Okay, you're over talking me again. Stop that. I just want to know what is the evidence for theism. Just report that. You said, to be clear, you said the fact people witnessed Jesus resurrecting. Was that it?
That's absolutely the first piece of evidence you as a believer need to have is he rose from the dead.
First, I don't believe Jesus existed. Obviously, I don't believe he resurrected, but we don't need to dispute that. I get you have arguments for those. Let's say he resurrected. Let's say he existed.
Yes.
Okay. Now, why would I believe that God exists?
Because from my belief in Jesus Christ, I pray, and I was in a financially difficult position. I asked God for help, went to the casino 30 minutes down the road. Hold on. You're blowing off a point. Everybody in the live right now wants to hear the point.
Hold on.
Everybody wants to hear the point. Chill out.
You're doing meta. Stop with the meta. Look, I don't even think anyone wants to hear this, but I honestly couldn't care less because I don't want to hear it. We don't want the meta. I don't know. I asked you to give me an analysis how the facts that Jesus resurrected is somehow evidentially supporting theism. I asked you to explain that. Of course, we can claim anything's evidence. I can say hippopotamuses existing are evidence for atheism, and someone would find that claim dubious and would want an analysis of how that fact is evidence for the hypothesis. That's what I'm asking. But instead of giving me that analysis, you went to facts about your economical situation and you as a gambler. That's not informing me how the fact Jesus resurrected is evidence for theism. I don't care if you threw away 10 grand in the shithole. I want to know, how is Jesus resurrecting empirically cooperating in a significant way with God existing? That's what I want to know. You can unmute yourself. I don't care about your gambling addiction, please.
Okay, so Just so everyone doesn't think I'm a complete degenerate, but it's not really about me. It's about the Lord today. I was out in Nevada, and I was also doing evangelism, and I was going
You're
to
doing it
church.
again.
And I was.
No, wait.
Why do you keep interrupting me? Now you're making me
I
a
can
little
explain
upset.
why. I can explain
Why do you keep
why.
interrupting me? It's
Reason,
annoying.
I'm going to explain. The reason I'm interrupting you is because you're not answering the question.
I'm
Because what I'm asking you to
telling
do,
you something. I'm telling you a story that's going to lead to the answer.
I don't need a story.
I already told you the
I
answer.
need,
Jesus Christ resurrected, dude.
okay,
They
that's
saw
what
him.
I'm asking you. Okay, but
Everything
what
he
am
said
I
was
asking
true.
you? What am I asking you about the resurrection and the witnesses? What am I asking you? Are you tracking?
You're asking me
Or no,
how
you're
that
not tracking.
proves. You're asking me how that proves
Not
God.
proves. I'm just asking you to
Because you
show
didn't
me how
read.
that's evidence. How
Because
that's evidence for
because of
theism.
everything that Jesus said in the Holy Bible, and then he died after he told his disciples. He said, "I'm going to be delivered into the hands of
Okay.
men, and they're going to kill me, and 3 days later, I'm going to rise from the dead." And then he actually
Okay, well,
did.
hold on.
You're just an
Okay, hold
unbeliever,
on.
bro.
Okay, hold on.
You're an unbeliever.
Of
All of
course,
you who are out
okay.
there, unbelievers.
we don't need the meta. You gotta control yourself. Of course, some obvious thing is, suppose I sent a fireball flying from the sky like Elijah, and suppose that I wasn't Elijah, just some random dude, and I said it was done in the name of, I don't know, Allah. Of course, I can be lying about the source, right? There's theories like source theism that could explain the fact. But of course, I can be cognizant of imagine I have superpowers, and I go around telling people it's done in the name of Allah. Now, of course, me doing that and saying it's in the name of Allah isn't proving that it's done in the name of Allah, but whether it's evidence is questionable, right? Now, of course, we have stipulated the fact it's not done in virtue of any God. It's done in virtue of the fact I have superpowers, and I'm lying, informing people of a false source as to where these facts are being, what's the facts of where they're being brought about. It doesn't delineate to any theism. It has no explanation from any God. Now, of course, Jesus saying all that is not proof it's done by God, but it's questionable whether it's even evidence. And if it were evidence, there's still a question of whether the evidence is significant enough to warrant the belief Christianity is true.
You don't see God's
God's
communication to you.
Let me land the plane. Right now, we just want to understand Jesus resurrected. I'm granting you that fact. Now, inform me how that's evidence for theism.
Jesus Christ rose from the dead. You can believe the words that he said.
You're a really good reasoner. You should probably become a logician because you're great at doing inferences and reasoning. You're such a brilliant guy. I hope you don't come back on my live because, dude, I got to finish this test. I have 30 minutes and a couple more questions. I'm going to fail if I don't pay more attention. And I got to mute myself. Thanks for the cowboy hat, Miglo. What's up? You got evidence there's a God?
Well, from observable things, like the previous person was saying, I just have questions on how do you view the habitable zone or stuff like the water cycle.
Well, look, I'm not here to answer questions. I'm here to be presented
Well,
evidence.
those are my evidences.
Okay, so the water cycle, how's the water cycle evidence for God?
It's clear proof, undeniable proof there's a system there in place.
I'm asking you how the water cycle is evidence that there's a God.
Well, in order for this thing to have this system it had to have an order. In order for it to have an order, it has to have an order maker, right?
No, I don't think. First.
So how did that happen?
I don't. If you're saying that there has to be an agent that constructs the order, you just have to give that argument. Thanks for the heart study.
There has to be. Yeah, I'm saying that the habitable zone for the Earth to be perfectly placed.
When you say has to be, what is that saying?
It means there is no other option. There is no other option.
So it's not logically possible. Is that what you're saying?
It's impossible for anything else other than a lawgiver to have placed these things there.
Sure. And what's the argument for that?
Well, we can see it. I mean, it's
thanks for the heart call.
I mean, the Earth is literally perfectly placed right where there.
When you say you see it, that's just not informing me if there's what the argument is.
So the habitable zone where the Earth is at between those two planets is the only way that we have water on this planet.
Okay,
right?
Look, what am I asking you though?
Okay,
what are you not answering?
Okay, what are you?
What I'm asking is what's the argument that establishes the order of the water cycle must be explained by a mind? What's that argument?
I don't know the name for that argument.
Not the name of the argument. What is the argument? Render the argument. Look, imagine I said hippopotamuses is evidence atheism is true. You would find that you would be skeptical towards that claim and reasonably ask for the argument of how hippos' existence is evidence for atheism. We don't want to just say things, require things. We don't just want to throw around assertions and not establish them to be true. When you say that the order of the water cycle requires a mind or an agent, what's the argument supporting that?
The argument supporting that would be, I would say that it would be impossible for it to happen on its own.
That's the claim. I'm asking what's the argument supporting it couldn't have been done without a mind.
Maybe I don't
know.
No
argument.
Maybe I don't know how.
Great.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, hippopotamuses are evidence for atheism, and I have no argument for that too. Okay, great. That's really interesting. Do you have any other evidence that maybe you can actually support, or else we can just go around saying anything's an argument? Hippos' existence an argument for atheism.
So you want an argument, though, but I was really trying to have a conversation with you, but I don't understand.
My argument, an argument's what's called an epistemic justification. It's just a justification. The claim hippos are evidence for atheism, that's a claim. That's not a justification. An argument is that which establishes the justification for the claim. What are the reasons for me to accept hippos supports atheism? Just like you're saying that order requires a mind. To make order requires a mind. What's the argument for that? What are the reasons for me to accept that?
I'm going to follow you and come back because I don't have the argument. I don't have the argument, so I don't want to say something.
I believe I do, Benny. Nice talking to you, by the way. I kind of empathize with you because, you know, I'm a believer in Jesus Christ, but I have a hard time with most people that claim to be believers in Jesus Christ. Anyway,
sure, but what's the evidence that it got exists?
Here we go. Can you prove anything exists outside of your consciousness?
That's a question. I need the answer. What's the evidence for theism?
It's consciousness itself.
You're saying the fact there's consciousness is evidence for theism?
Absolutely.
Okay, how is consciousness evidence for theism?
Well, the only thing we know for sure, an absolute fact.
Okay, that clicking is loud.
Sorry? I missed that.
How is consciousness evidence for theism?
So the only thing we can prove for sure is our own conscious existence, not what we're seeing.
I'm not asking you that. I'm not asking you what we can and what we can't prove. I'm asking you how the fact there is consciousness is evidentially supporting theism.
Right. And so if you throw matter and gases together to build structures, right, to create something like consciousness, how would you do that? I know you're not going to answer that question.
Thank you for another question, right? What we want is the evidence. Look, this is attempt 3 now that you had to report the evidence and not ask me a question. Look, if I asked what's the evidence and we look, imagine
from innate matter.
What's the evidence for theism?
It's consciousness. You cannot get consciousness from
How is that evidence?
How is
then
it
how
not?
is that evident?
It's the only fact you have.
Hippos are evidence for atheism. How is it not? How is it not? There's hippos. That's evidence atheism is true. What can you explain how it's evidence? How is it not? It couldn't be otherwise. I'm not going to explain. I just don't see how it couldn't. You're like a really good, you should become a logician as well. Your inferential skills are off the charts. You know that? You're like one of the best philosophers of religion, right? You gave sound reasoning for theism. Yep.
Can you prove consciousness exists?
Yeah, that question is evidence. Is that because I asked the question of what's the evidence in the inquisition you just produced from your mouth? That's evidence. No, it's not. It's not. It's a question.
It is evidence. It is the evidence.
Thanks. You said that 5 times now without explaining how. Become a philosopher. You're a quick. Why can't they? Okay, you left. You're a waste of time, by the way. So I'm not gonna bring you back up. Now we can bring up Vienna. Hey, what's the evidence for theism? Yeah, I hear you. Yes, I can hear you.
Right. So I was looking through the SCP. So it said logical consistency is formally defined as if a proposition P is consistent with a certain formal system. And yesterday I said something that is materially equivalent to that, and you said it's uninformative. So are you saying the conventional definition of logical consistency is uninformative?
I asked you what it means for something to be logically possible.
What constitutes something to be logically consistent is going to be consistent with logic. Wait, that's not informative.
Fix your mic, bro. I don't want playback.
My account of logical possibilities is not informative.
Yeah, well, first, there's
one issue. It's not informative to say something, if something can be true given the laws of logic, that's not informative.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
So you
can stop the recording.
So you just said
Wait,
conventional semantics. Consistent.
We don't need to.
Not informative. This is a bad look.
You're not going to do well. It's not a bad look, and I can explain why.
No, it is a bad look. That's why you got clipped.
You don't need to repeat the claim. It's a bad look. I'm going to explain how it's not a bad look.
And I didn't just repeat the claim. I'm not questioning it.
You're over talking. You're saying look, you're spurging like an E inside.
It's either the case that the convention is
okay. What we're now going to do is, if you're going to talk, every time I speak, I'm going to now drop you because you're obviously not willing to engage in a cordial fashion. So the reason why it's not informative to say that's logically consistent is because you don't have an account of logical consistency. The rigorous way it would be defined in a logic is that it's true. The formula is true at least in one model. That's what it would mean for something to be logically consistent. And that's what I told you is the rigorous and informative account, because to say something is logically consistent is actually one relative and is unclear. There's a range of ways something can be cashed out as logical consistent, which is relative to the logics. So when you say for it to be logically consistent or to be consistent with the laws of logic, it's not clear what it would mean for something to be consistent with the laws of logic. That's what we need an account of, right? Now, presumably you appreciated that. And all I was saying is not that you can't, of course you can communicate what it means for something to be true of every, or at least true of one row of one model, or some formula is true at least in one model. What that would mean is that's just logically consistent. But similar in the same way, if someone's unclear what it would mean for something to be a bachelor, right? And I say what it would mean for someone to go to a wedding just to be a bachelor, and you don't know what it would mean to be a bachelor, that's not informative, right? There's a more rigorous account that actually flushes out all ambiguity, right? That's all I was saying. Now you can come up.
So you dropped me and you're running away because you're trying to save face. Because
We're not gonna do meta. We're not gonna do meta.
no,
Now,
this is
do you
not meta.
understand what I?
It's either the
Okay, so now do you
it's
understand
either
what I
the
was
case that you
saying?
called. Well,
Do you
can I
now
speak? Can you
understand?
stop interrupting
I'm.
me? Can you stop
Can
interrupting
you?
me? You're
Can
in,
you?
sir.
I'm gonna
Why?
actually.
This is not.
You're doing it. So look, now I actually do have to just drop you and bring you back, and I don't want to. I don't know. And this is the same thing you've done in Ian's live. I mean, Ian's a different person, right? But just be demure. Just be linear. Just be cordial. It's not hard. Just give me the opportunity to speak. I'll give you it, and we can go one at a time. You're being really belligerent and annoying and obnoxious for nothing. I'm not being an asshole to you. You're just like being weird, really weird. It's a really bad look. Talk about bad luck, right? All the bad luck you accuse me of is just not giving an account of what it means for something to be logically consistent, right? And I said that's actually uninformative. And then you said the fact SCP accounts for logical possibility of something being logically consistent, and that's what's the bad luck is saying when you don't account for logical consistency. That's not informative. Then you go to SCP and show how Stanford Encyclopedia accounts for logical possibility as logical consistency, and that falls afoul of the same issue of not defining logical consistency. That's equally as uninformative. Now I'll bring you back up. This is your last opportunity. Hopefully we can have a cordial back and forth. If not, you're going to be dropped and not come back. You look terrible.
So everybody, monkeyboy is
So
what is
look,
it called? He's
you're
not
doing meta.
retracting. 1 minute.
No. Now,
Why are you
can
interrupting
you?
me? It's my opportunity to speak.
We're not here to
Let me
talk
speak.
to the audience. So
Shut up.
can you
Let me
respond
speak.
to what I said?
And
Respond to
give
what
me
I
the
said.
opportunity. Stop demanding
Go
and then
ahead.
interrupting me.
As long as you're responding,
Shut up.
I won't drop
Shut
you.
your mouth. So
Go
let me
ahead.
finish. Stop being nervous and freaking out. Because again,
Zip.
you dog, relax. Look, yesterday,
I'm chill.
you're still talking. Yesterday, you made a blunder and you got clipped. And now I'm saying either it is the case that you retracted that blunder or not. Now,
What's the blunder?
which one is it? You said
What's the blunder?
You said the conventional account is non-informative.
And yeah, and do you know why I said that?
So the conventional account is non-informative?
It's not informative if you don't appreciate
What
what it
is
means
it?
for
It's
something
either
to
the
be
case that's
logically
informative or
consistent.
not. Is it informative?
Wait, ceteris paribus, I can't answer that.
Is the conventional account informative?
I'm
Is
a
either the case that it's
contextualist.
informative or not?
Wait, do you understand what if I'm a contextualist about informativity, that means relevant to conditions, I can make an adjudication of whether it's informative. I can't make judgments context independent. I'm saying
But
in the
you do
context
know.
in which you did it.
What is it
Wait,
called? But this is
I thought we're
relative.
not going to interrupt each other.
By the way, you made a blunder
Well,
again because this is
I'm the one speaking. So
this is
you
relative.
just let me just
No,
okay.
I said
okay,
yesterday.
Just, okay, wait.
Yesterday,
Just, okay,
that was relative.
just let me finish.
So
I was
you're
saying-
bringing up trivial points because
okay,
the
so you can-
context it was relativized to a context.
Look, I'll let you actually come back one more time. The point I'm saying is that yesterday I told you never gave an account of logical consistency. And that makes it uninformative because there's a range of counts that are relative to logic, all right, to the logic. Now that you're clear, what I'm saying is I'm a contextualist about what it means for an expression to be informative. And I said in the context in which you didn't give an account of logical consistency, when you say what it means for something to be logically possible, it's that it's logically consistent, that's uninformative. But I showed you that I have a broad account that corroborates with any logic, right, without relativity. What it means of all formal systems, all logical formal systems, to be logically possible, is that the formula in the logic is true at least in one model, right? Which, if you know anything about logic, there's a formal language and a formal model, and that it's at least true of one interpretation, the formula. That's what I'm saying. And that's true for any given logic. And that's a more robust account because that accommodates all interpretations of logic or any relative logic. The account you gave of logical possibility is unclear. There is not one univocal account of logical consistency. Those are relative to logic. So when you're unclear what it means for something to be logically consistent because there's a range of interpretations as opposed to one univocal account, then it's unclear what you can mean. Imagine I said I hit the woman with a water bottle. I can interpret that as I hit the woman using a water bottle. I hit the woman holding a water bottle. Well, this example is hermeneutic, which is a problem because it deals with interpretation, which though my point wasn't about hermeneutic, this example I offered about ambiguity is a better example would be something like knowledge, where what it means to know something can just vary in senses. But if I describe it as justified true belief, for example, well, it might actually also vary what I mean by justification, but the point stands, unlike in the case of logic, where in a logic, there's not going to be a difference in definition of a model, but there would be a difference in facts about models relative to logic. But suppose we had like some univocal definition of justification as well. In the logic, the definition of what makes something logically possible is actually going to be univocal. But the facts about what is going to be true, at least in one model, is going to vary from logic to logic. Similarly to how, if I use knowledge, I have a univocal sense of knowledge, which is justified true belief. Facts about what is known would vary, but there's going to be a univocal definition. right? There's ambiguity. And I gave you an account that doesn't fall afoul of being, in fact, the one I'm doing is more robust than, it's more ambiguous than just merely hitting a person with a water bottle, right? Because they're like completely different logical frameworks that have different interpretations. So hopefully you understand that. Now, this is your actual last time. If you're dropped, you're not coming back. I want you to respond to that. Don't talk to the audience.
You look terrible, by the way. Anyways, back to what I was saying, and you're still interrupting. Back to what I was saying. Again, you're talking about relative, like it's relevant to some context. I literally specified the context. I said yesterday that is relative to some context. And what's funny, I said it's consistent given a certain formal system.
I'm not talking.
And then you wanted to interrupt, and you're smiling.
I smiled.
You said given a certain formal system, and you didn't even track that. And then you're talking about there's hermeneutics and there's interpretations, and it's not univocal and it's nuanced. I'm not denying that either. But I said the conventional account.
Well, it's not hermeneutics.
Hold on, shut up. I said the conventional account. You said it's not formal.
I didn't.
And if
you mischaracterized me. I didn't.
Shut your mouth.
Look.
And if you know anything about philosophy,
well,
you realize
I never said anything about hermeneutics. That's wrong.
More often than not, interpretations hinge on hermeneutics. Interpretations hinge on hermeneutics.
I'm not talking. No. I'm saying.
He even made another blunder. He's like, I didn't say anything about hermeneutics.
No,
I said something about
I didn't.
What a clown.
Wait, no. I'm saying that the sense. Wait. I'm not. Wait. I'm saying.
You're stuttering. Yeah.
I'm not stuttering. I'm saying wait.
I'm not stuttering. Wait.
Okay, the spurging's not cool. You don't look. The rhetoric stuff is just. Okay. You're not spurging. Sure, the audience agrees too. You're over talking. If I can get my sentence across uninterrupted, then I wouldn't.
Again.
I wouldn't need to mute you.
You look terrible.
So what I'm saying is that the sense of the word varies to the framework. Such
that's
that
irrelevant.
I'm not saying
I'm talking about the conventional account. Can I provide an example? Can I provide?
No, just bye. You're just a waste. But in any way, people told me that Vienna was more bright than he was. This guy's just a complete spur. I don't see anything. This, by the way, what happens is if anyone watches Ian here, I don't know who does. I was sent a live saying this guy was running some argument that it was unclear. It kind of looked like the modal ontological argument and contingency, like some amalgamation or something. I was unclear what the argument was. No one actually would communicate it to me because there was just nonstop meta. But he was using like metaphysical modality, and he would not give me an account of what that means. He would just keep running, and I kept just saying, "What do you mean by metaphysical modality?" And then he told me something like, "It's true at least in one metaphysically possible world." That's what he means by metaphysical possibility. Now, what I asked him then, what is a metaphysical possible world? He said, "You're not tracking." And I asked him, wait, and then I told him, no, I got here late. I never heard it. And he's like, yeah, so you didn't hear it. So what it means to, at least by my lights, what it means to not track what's communicated is that someone communicates a concept to you and you don't capture what's being said. And I told him, wait, it's not that I didn't track. I got here late. You already ran the argument on Ian, and I didn't hear the argument, and I didn't hear an analysis. I'm asking now, and you're not informing me. And then he walked back that I didn't track it and just said, yeah, that's because you weren't here. What does it, imagine someone says what they're going to, imagine, they're going to eat somewhere like a fast food place or something. And they tell their brother. Then I walk in the house. I'm like, where are we eating? And I wasn't in the house. And he says, you're not tracking. I'm like, no, I just got in the house. Yeah, that's because you weren't here. You didn't listen. Well, which is it? Presumably you're using like idiosyncratic language where you can somehow not track, and that captures not being present when it was communicated. This guy's a complete goof. But in any ways, let's get the next guest up here.